everyone to the 5th Honorary Patronage of the 341st session of the University Philosophical Society. Before we start this word to Rhys, I'd like to give a bit of background about the award which Phil endeavours to achieve. Phil is the world's oldest student society and has recorded the presence of many remarkable members, from Oscar Wilde to Sandra Beckett to Bram Stoker, across 340 years of history. Today we have over 10,000 members from all corners of the world. Each year, the Council elects a select number of individuals to be awarded at the Society based on their significant cultural achievements within their respective fields. This includes figures such as Angela Merkel, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Noel Rogers, Courtney Love, Kevin Hart, Ice Cube, Whoopi Goldberg, Hosier twice, and a wide number of Nobel laureates, world leaders, Olympians, and Oscar and Grammy Award winners. This year, our Council has elected Rhys McClenaghan to the honour of receiving the Bram Stoker Medal of Cultural Achievement for his contributions to gymnastics and Irish sport. Over the course of the last 8 years, Rhys has quickly set himself as Ireland's most decorated gymnast and one of the most successful of the 21st century. Emerging from the Rathgay Club in Bangor, Rhys first started competing for Ireland as a specialist in the pommel horse around 2015. Developing a reputation for having highly complex and technical routines, his career has gone from strength to strength. He's gone on to win 9 medals across all international competitions, becoming the only gymnast in the world to become an Olympic, World, European and Commonwealth champion in one single apparatus. Off the gymnast floor, he's been an ambassador and advocate for athletes at the governing level in the island of Ireland, successfully representing both Ireland and Northern Ireland in the last 5 years, in spite of challenges posed by international sporting federations. He remains the only recipient of both an Olympic gold medal for Ireland and a British Empire medal. Beyond this, he's been an outspoken advocate for cultural development within gymnastics, prioritising athletes' welfare, and off the floor, he's recently won the 2025 episodes of Dancing with the Stars. We're very excited to be welcoming Rhys and honouring him with this award today, so I hope you join me in a round of applause for him. Thank you very much. Not quite the best medal you've received in the last 12 months, but something nonetheless.
No, I love it. Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. It's a real honour to be here. It is. And I got a little tour around the campus, got to see the Book of Kells for the first time. Yeah, doing all the touristy stuff. But it's really an honour to get any kind of recognition like this, especially outside of sports, because when I was really growing up in gymnastics, there wasn't too much of hype around gymnastics. You know, we look at Ireland and there's not a long history of gymnasts coming through the system. There's not even like a long history of great athletes in Ireland. You know, that's why we know them all so well. And for me personally, when I was growing up, those great athletes that were in the few numbers, they were such inspirations to me. But really, like in terms of gymnastics, I always thought that even if you reach the highest level in gymnastics, that it wouldn't really be recognised. And I feel like in days like today, even the likes of going on Dancing with the Stars, it feels like gymnastics is seen in the country now, which I feel like is an amazing thing. And hopefully that's just the start of a movement of inspiration within the country. I know that the sport is growing a huge amount, you know, from younger kids going into gymnastics clubs. It's probably close to 40,000 members now throughout the country of Ireland. So it's an amazing thing, and I hope I've contributed positively to that. And I know that it's not finished either. You know, my career has been a great one. It's at the point now where I could actually walk away from the sport very happy and, you know, retire with a smile on my face, but I'm not going to do that yet. I'm still 6 years young, and even though my body is really sore when I wake up in the morning, I'm doing gymnastics when I was 6 years old, but it's been an enjoyable journey, and I hope to continue it even into this like latter stage of my gymnastics career now, and with really the motivation of enjoying my sport. I was talking with some of the other guys about really when I started the sports, I made sure that I enjoyed it, and the people around me made sure that my parents, my coaches at the time, the goal was for me to love gymnastics, to love what I do. And it's interesting now that, you know, after all of the achievements, I'm going back to using that as my main motivation. And I think that speaks to something on many levels, whether that be gymnastics you're doing, whether that be your studies or your work. If you enjoy what you do, then it's going a much easier journey, and one that you'll enjoy not only when you're achieving things, but on the journey towards those achievements. So again, thank you very much for having me. Thank you for being here, and we'll get started with the Q&A. Lovely. Thank you.
I'll ask a few questions, then open up to the crowd. I'm sure people have questions of their own. Yeah, I mean, I'd really love to talk about that sort of early beginning stage for you with the sport. I mean, you've talked about you sort of making sure that you had an early love for it. But I read about your initial experience with your coach, Luke Harrison, and he sort of set out a 10-year plan for you in your early teens. And that sort of plan for sustained longevity demands a level of competitiveness. Do you think you had that sort of competitiveness from the get-go, or it's something that they were looking to instill in you over time?
Yeah, it's a great question, because when I started working with my current coach now, Luke, who brought me to winning the Olympic Games, it was when I was 14. He had these ambitious visions that nobody else in the country really had. So it was challenging me as a 14-year-old to kind of, not only just participate in this sport and do great things in it, but actually be the best in it, be the best in the entire world. And it was a difficult thing to first of all do, because there was nobody on this island that I could really look up to and be like, I want to be like them, and this is how they done it. The same with my coach Luke, though. There was no other coach on this island of Ireland that he could look to learn from, to know that this path was already paved before we needed to pave the path in front of us. And but that didn't really stop us from learning outside of the country either. And I think that's a lesson that I always try to preach to up-and-coming coaches and everything, is don't be scared to reach out to other people. Drop them that email, drop them a phone call, and learn from the people who have done it, whether that be they're from Japan, whether from the United States. Always just make the effort to do that and learn as much as you can from everybody. So presumably he took a lot of help from sort of athletic federations across the world. You've already talked, we were talking backstage, but your sort of support from Germany and other nations like that. Were there other sort of major influences that helped contribute to sort of setting that initial foundation for success? Well, I think just my parents were always very supportive of me in every way. They actually had initially lower standards than I did for myself when I was growing up in the sport, because they would say, of course they had to sacrifice a huge amount to bring me to training every day, to pay the training fees, pay competition fees, flights, accommodation, everything. They had to sacrifice so much for that, and I guess for them then they had almost certain goals for me to achieve in their head. For my dad, it was something as simple as just going to the Commonwealth Games. That was enough for him, and he said this to me, that if I went to the Commonwealth Games and done nothing after that, he would have been like, okay, that's fine, that was a job well done. For my mum, she had a little bit higher standards. She says, going to the Olympic Games would be pretty sweet. So there was high standards definitely within my mum. But then when I came into the gymnastics gym doors, then myself and my coach were scheming and looking past Commonwealth Games, looking past just making it to the Olympics, but also being the first to actually win titles at these events. And I think the relationship between a coach and gymnast is important to touch on, because when I was growing up in this sport, I would have went to school for 6 hours per day. Then I would have jumped in the car, had a 1 hour car journey where I would have done my homework, got changed in the car, eat my dinner in the car, and then trained for 4.5 hours every evening. And this was every evening from the age of 10 years old that I was doing this. So it adds up to around 30 hours per week that I was training. So really a full-time job on top of my schoolwork when I was growing up. And what that meant was I was seeing my coach more than I would have seen my parents or anybody else in my life for that fact. So when you have a very good coach, that's obviously a very good thing to not only your development in gymnastics, but your development in life. And luckily myself and my coach Luke had very similar ambitions where we could match each other in that. He was saying, let's get this score. I was saying, okay, well, what if we do one better? What if we get this higher score? and that translated into that 10-year plan that Luke set out for me, where he was saying, you know, Rhys has got the potential. He's very rough around the edges. Luke had to teach me a lot of fundamental skills in gymnastics, but with the ultimate goal being win the Olympic Games and win every title along with that, which thankfully we done within that 10-year plan.
I mean, so you read interviews that you've done in the past, and it's really remarkable that there's been so much linearity, and it really hasn't looked like you've really stepped or put a foot out yet. I mean, have there been any internal struggles that have, you know, potentially not been acknowledged, or any complications, you know, they've you know, withdrawn your confidence or things like that? I think it's remarkable that there's really been no step wrong so far.
Yeah, well, that linearity of my career, I think that was just lucky, because it you know, the Olympic Games could have very well been like in 2018, and I could have done a great routine and beat the Olympic champion at the Olympic Games and started my career with an Olympic gold medal. But it was really just luck that it just so happened that the Commonwealth Games came first, then the Europeans came first, or second, third, World Championships, and then fourth, the Olympics. That doesn't do anything else other than just give me satisfaction and make a great story, because it looks like I'm climbing up to the top, but really it could have just happened that first time. I could have just won the Olympics at that first competition. So yeah, luck a little bit on my side in terms of that, just the overarching theme, but there's definitely been setbacks, of course. Did anybody watch the Tokyo Olympics? So like I fell in the Olympic game final, and Olympic Games doesn't come around often, especially that one. That was actually delayed 1 year because of COVID, so it felt like a 5-year build up to this Olympic Games, and yeah, it's soul crushing when something like that happens, when you've got like a little window of opportunity to just do something and you don't do it, and you make a mistake, and you know, in my case I fell. So but on the flip side of that, there's like this interesting thing that I discovered when that happened in Tokyo, and it was like this, also with that window of opportunity being lost, there was also this window of opportunity where I felt more motivated than I've ever felt in my entire life, and I think that hasn't ever been matched since that day that I had the worst day of my life, you know. And I think that was because I was open to, first of all, acknowledging how disappointed I was, how distraught I was. I was, of course, flashing through my career, like, was this all just a big waste of time? I just threw it away. There was some silly mistake there in this moment when it mattered most. But then I flipped it quickly and was taking the positives in it. I was saying to myself, I'm going to come back better. I felt this like surge of energy where I was like, I need to fix this mistake that I had, and then come back and be better than ever. And thankfully that's what happened. The next year I won World Championships. The next year after that, done the same again, and then the Paris Olympics was the year after that. So, and I don't think those achievements would have happened if it wasn't for that failure, and especially if it wasn't for me switching that disappointment into motivation. It was such a key moment.
The sort of philosophy on training is so interesting, and because you've sort of said in the past you have this no excuses attitude to training, and sort of it's supported by your background, how early you started and how consistent you've been. But sort of looking at your internal motivators, have those been the biggest driving forces, those mistakes? Or are there sort of more consistent motivators that you consistently go to make sure that you get to that training at 6 a.m. When your body doesn't really want you to be doing it?
Yeah, it's something I've been asking myself a lot this last year since I won the Olympic Games, because big motivator was win the Olympic gold medal. Like, if I was feeling rubbish someday and I didn't want to go into the gym, I made myself go in because I was thinking, well, that's what's going to win you that Olympic gold medal. But now it's done, so I don't really have that excuse anymore. I don't have that thing to fall back on. So I've been searching this last year, like, well, what can motivate me on those days I don't want to go into the gym? A big one being that love for the sport, that foundation that I've already spoken about. That's something that kept coming up in my mind and my psyche, that that actually will get me into the gym on these hard days. Just even sitting back and acknowledging, well, like, you get to be a gymnast, it's your job, that's crazy, like, that's awesome. And if a younger Rhys is looking at me, like, down in the dumps about going into the gym when this is my job, like, I need to wise up, really. But then on top of the love for gymnastics, you know, it's the people around you too, that support system that have that equal belief in you, even on the days when you don't really believe in yourself that much. Having people to lean on is a real important part of that.
And you've talked about sort of the improved relationship that gymnastics has within the national Irish sporting federations. Could you talk a bit about how gymnastics' place in Irish sport has improved, and how, I suppose, personally you felt that having a stronger relationship with not only the gymnastics federation but also the sort of national sporting bodies more broadly has improved gymnastics' place in Irish sport? Yeah.
Well, first of all, Irish sport has gotten a hell of a lot better throughout the years. I speak to athletes that were athletes back in around 2012, and they say, well, we had zero funding then, and to me it seems like ages ago because it was only 12 back then, but to them that was part of their career. They were not getting any funding back in 2012. There was no physiotherapists on hand, there was no support systems around them, and then I look at the system now, especially within Olympic sports, and we've got everything there. Up in Abbottstown, outside Blanchardstown there's an institute with physios, doctors, nutritionists, psychologists. We can avail to all of these things, and then on top of that, you're getting the funding required. Issue with getting the funding is you need to get results first. So you need to get results to get the funding, but quite often you need to get a little bit of funding to go to those competitions and get the results. So that's just a difficult part that I think will always be in sport. But I feel like right now, especially after Paris last year, we had our most successful Olympic Games ever for Team Ireland. So to kind of sit back and look at that, it's something I'm very proud to be a part of. But then also in gymnastics, like you're saying, you gotta kind of work with the sports, with the governing body in gymnastics is Gymnastics Ireland, and I would sit down with the CEO of Gymnastics Ireland, say ideas, say my thoughts, and I know that in some other sports they're like, I've never seen my CEO at all, and I've been in this sport for 15 years, so I always try to encourage other sports to do the same thing, to listen to their athletes, to see what ideas they have to improve the sport even more. And I'm in a good position where I can actually have some kind of say and influence now.
And it sounds like there's an excellent amount of sort of proximity to the top, which you've definitely benefited from over the last decade. Do you think, sort of at the bottom-up level, looking at expanding gymnastics at the grassroots level, there's still barriers of entry to be taken down, or improvements to be made there?
Not so much at grassroots. Most parents I talk to, they're either saying they really want to get their children into gymnastics, or their children are already in gymnastics and they're seeing the real benefits of that. Of course, it's worthwhile still pushing parents to get their kids into gymnastics, but not really for the reason that we want more Olympic gold medals. I think it's just such a great sport to learn the fundamentals of how your body moves. Whether or not you want to go into GAA, go into soccer, any other sports. I know for a fact from talking with other coaches, they say they can always pick out the gymnasts that went to gymnastics training because they don't have two left feet. They're flexible, they're agile, and that's just the real perks of doing gymnastics at grassroots. It's a different question than looking at going into high performance. I mentioned at 10 years old I was doing 30 plus hours per week. Not every kid's going to want to do that. Not every parent's going to want to have their kid doing that either, and I don't blame them, to be honest. It's just not for some people. Because my studies fell away because of gymnastics. I was fine with that. Other people are not okay with that. So I just know everybody's going to take their own paths. But if somebody is wanting to go down that high performance route, there almost needs to be the support there. And no matter how much I think about it, it always kind of comes back to the coaches. I've already mentioned that the importance of coaches being around gymnasts and how much input they have on their careers. The coaches' knowledge in Ireland needs to improve first before the gymnasts get better. you know. So it's just about nurturing that, finding coaches across the country that love gymnastics just as much as say I love gymnastics, and then nurture them, pay them well ideally, and then hopefully they'll produce good gymnasts in the future.
You've talked in the past about how, partially thanks to the relationship with the governing body now, you've been able to sort of live on a comfortable living wage for the last, I suppose, 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, well, I've never had a normal job, which is cool. I'm a phony, but yeah, since I was 18, I got results early, thankfully, and then I got put onto the carding scheme, which are, in Sport Ireland, there's like a tier of carding schemes, so it's like the highest tier, middle tier, and then the lowest tier. Just depending on your results, that depends on what tier you go on to, but thankfully I had good results early, so I got on a good carding tier first.
And presumably you'd say, sort of, looking at Gymnastics Ireland for 10, 20 years down the line, the next step is to sort of have more institutional support in the form of financially supporting coaches?
Yeah, that would be ideal actually. It's not something I've thought about too much, to be honest, but that would be the ideal scenario, is like just getting coach education brought into the curriculum a little bit more, and you know, not just making it a box ticking exercise, not just giving them qualifications to make sure they're insured to take these skills, but also just getting them to understand how the competitions work, how the training environment works, how even the importance of psychology within gymnastics. I always thought my coach was like a psychologist to me. He knew as soon as I walked through the doors of that gym how I was going to train that day, what my mood was looking like. He was feeling out all these things, and he wasn't just teaching me technical skills, because gymnastics and sport is a whole lot more than that.
I think the psychology point is really interesting, because you've been so outspoken about sort of gymnasts and broader athletics' welfare, and making sure that athletes are protected. Do you think that that's sort of another foundational next step that has been missed in the past? Sort of acknowledging athletes' welfare and athletes' well-being? And what do you think are sort of the most important elements of having a good well-being as an athlete, beyond making sure that your relationship with your coach is a bit strong?
Yeah, well, in terms of athlete welfare, of course, you need to have that support system. It's a strange thing to navigate, because very few have been down that road before, like I said. So you're going to run into hurdles just in your day-to-day life that most would not, but just because they're different, it doesn't mean they're any more challenging than a day-to-day life or like a normal work day. It'll just be different, so there's fewer people you can talk to. I know now that my current psychologist is an ex-athlete, an Olympian, and you know, because she's been through similar things to me, she's able to almost relate, and it's nice to do that with them. And I wouldn't get that kind of feedback from even just a normal psychologist, like a clinical psychologist. So that's an amazing thing that the likes of Sport Ireland are doing. They're making the transition from athletes retiring and then putting them back into this system that already exists in a more professional capacity outside of being an athlete. But then on top of that, like, athletes do need to make sure they're educating themselves too. It's something I've done throughout my entire career, is educate myself around the human mind, around psychology within sport, learn from others that have been before me as well. It's an ongoing process that I'm always trying to learn from, because I know that if I stop learning, then I'm going to run into barriers, and I don't want that to happen.
To talk about Dancing with the Stars for a bit,
Yeah.
I think that the sort of parallels and also differences are really interesting. Partially because you talk about your relationship with your coach, your relationship with Laura, the sort of 10 to 11 week period of competing, and then also presumably prep time in between that. You know, what were the biggest similarities that maybe helped ensure success on that front as well, despite it, you know, obviously being not an individual athletic performance, but one to perform with a bigger team?
Yeah, it came with this challenge. It's like I couldn't remember the routines to save my life, because I'm used to doing these routines in gymnastics. that's the parallel everyone drew. It was like, well, you're doing routines in gymnastics, you're going to be doing them in the show. And I just couldn't remember the routines, because in gymnastics I'm training for like, I've had the routine I done at the Olympic Games, I had at least written on a page for 8 years. So I knew it pretty well. And then all of a sudden I'm on the show, I'm learning these steps. I've never danced before until I went on the show. I'm learning these steps within 5 days and then performing it live on TV. So that was a scary and daunting thing to be able to do. But then, yeah, I drew some parallels, especially like the learning methods. It would be like 2 days before the show, and I wouldn't have the steps, I wouldn't know what I was doing, and I would just know that I just need to sleep on it. And like my dance partner Laura, she was like freaking out, like, no, you don't know the routine, like you can't do this. I'm like, no, I know that if I sleep on this, then it's gonna work out fine, and I just know that because of my prior experience with gymnastics. She didn't quite understand it until like a couple of weeks into the show, and then we started to understand each other better. But yeah, it was a weird experience. I look back on it, it feels like a weird dream. Yeah, strange.
Were the parts of it that you found maybe preferable, sort of, just looking at it from the sort of performance standpoint, you know, I know you talked about it with Red Bull, but, you know, you're competing in the pommel horse and the crowd is nearly silent, and they're making sure that, you know, you've got the chance to prepare your mind, and, you know, you're dancing with Laura to a packed crowd with Beautiful Things by Benson Boone in the background. like it's a very different environment, but like,
yeah.
is there one part that you preferred more or less in that different scene?
Yeah, like you gotta have a smile on your face when you're dancing, right? And like it almost border on creepy if I was doing pommel horse with a smile on my face. But so yeah, there was those little changes. I love music as well, so just like getting to move my body with music was enjoyable. And yeah, I think the more you enjoy dancing and like kind of go all out in it, like kind of push all your fears and anxieties to the side, the better you perform. So it was interesting just kind of doing that. But then people will come up to me now and be like, so like, when are you next dancing? I'm like, I don't know. There's not going to be another opportunity for me to dance like that. So it was cool. That weird dream is now over, and I'm a retired dancer.
Very fair. Is there preferred? Do you warm up with music?
Yeah. I would train with music as well.
Do you have a go-to warm-up playlist or warm-up song?
Not really. Just whatever album I found that day, I think.
That's fair. I think I don't know. It seems so interesting to sort of take that opportunity now, and presumably it felt like a well-deserved break after such a long period of competing. But do you think you'll take opportunities like that in the future? You know, you've spoken about how you're not done yet, and you plan to keep competing at a high level. But will we see you, back on the telly at some point in the future if you feel like you need the break?
Yeah, maybe. I feel like it's good to do those things. It's good to kind of like step outside of my world was gymnastics for most of my life, and for that like little brief 3 months, although I was still training on top of it, it kind of felt like I was back at school, because I was doing the dance rehearsals for like 7 hours per day and then training in the evening for 4 hours. So I was mentally exhausted, similar to how I was when I was in school too. I don't miss that feeling at all. I like just like being a professional gymnast, and that's it. But I think it's good to first of all challenge yourself with things that you just didn't think were possible or weren't even on your plan. I'm so used to following this plan of, I got to win this competition, that competition. These are my long-term goals. It's cool to step outside of that. Winning Dancing with the Stars was never on my goals at all. So it was cool to like do that and challenge myself a little bit.
Is there any other, you talked about sort of maintaining motivation, but is there anything else sort of on the competitive bucket list? Be it as an athlete or be it as potentially you talk about coaching down the line, like is there anything else that you think needs to be vanquished in the next few years? That can be much longer term as well. I understand the coaching career might be longer if it does happen.
Yeah, I don't know. In my gymnastics career, it's an easy answer. Any competition I go to, I want to win. And it is as simple as that. That's not going to happen. but it wouldn't feel worthwhile to me doing this sport if I wasn't going to win a competition. And I feel like that's a nice balance I've struck between really loving the sport, loving what I do, but then also having that competitive side in me that I also really love, because that's sport. You gotta be a competitor. If you're not a competitor, you'll slip away. So in terms of in gymnastics, try to win everything I do, and hopefully when I finish my career, it'll be one I look back on. I know it already will be one I look back on with a smile on my face.
I think with that, we'll open up to questions. Good.
Yes.
How did you sleep the night before the Olympic final?
Actually, fine. I was falling asleep, not great the other night, and I was thinking to myself, I slept fine before the Olympic final, and I'm not sleeping fine now. So yeah, fine. I think I was just so strict about my sleep schedule, the diet, being tired from training as well. When you get into that routine, your sleep just goes fine. Now I've kind of, there'll be some days where I wouldn't eat great or wouldn't stay up late the night before, and then that's when it's all thrown out of balance. But yeah, I was thinking that the other night. It's interesting.
Do you have any kind of advice for maintaining a lot of the same kind of skills and abilities kind of outside of the gym? Because I moved away from my gym, and it's obviously you have weights and stuff for training, but it is different. It's a different kind of training.
Yeah. What do you do?
Pardon?
Are you talking about yourself?
I did aqua for a while, but it's kind of about maintaining a lot of the same strength and everything when it's not the same motivation.
Yeah, I find that really difficult too. When you're training this particular sport. I got surgery on my shoulder like 10 weeks ago there, and the first thing they get you to do is go into the weights gym, do all the weights, get the fundamental strength back. It just never matches what I'd done in gymnastics. And I think it's more so because your body just adapts to that sport that you've been doing for so long. So when you do go to the weights gym, for me, does not do the job. But also you can just be creative with that, and then also, look for gymnastics clubs around you. I know it'll be challenging in a sense, but I feel like also I know that I just couldn't do exercise without making it like a game almost, without making it competitive in some sense, and then the kind of fun goes out of exercise for me then. So I haven't enjoyed the last few weeks of me doing these rehab exercises with weights and stuff, but I'm now back doing handstands and everything, and now I'm feeling more like myself. I hope that answered your question, did it?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Go. Yep.
As someone who's had experience with nursing now, would you like to see male mentors in particular people that are artistic or more than
Yeah. Do you know about the recent rules they put in? So this year, maybe 2 months ago, they added in like an artistry score. So do you ever see like in the men's floor routines when they get into the corner of the floor, to get into the corner, you just have a little bit more running space. So what they do is they just like step into the corner and then go for their skill. I hate that. I really do. So what they've actually put into the rules now is you need to do something artistic to get into the corner. So that whether that be like a split jump, it could be a dive forward roll, something that actually doesn't really count to the skills in the routine, but you'll get deducted if you do a crappy corner transition like that. So they're really making an effort. I don't know about music. I don't think I love almost the rigidity at the same time in the men's floor routine in comparison to the female floor routines where there is that dance element to it. I feel like for the men's floor it is much more like power orientated, but at the same time you can't let things like that slip. Well, it's called artistic gymnastics for a reason, and anytime that kind of skews off that title, I think it's a bad thing. It's a great question, and now they're doing it, so maybe you'll see it, and maybe you'll notice it in the next World Championships.
Yep.
Since you had your cars routine for the 8 meters, like going forwards, because you see you're like
self like adding upgrades or like making it more difficult, or like you say you're kind of at the top of your game as it's already like that's what it is.
Yeah, well, like I was just mentioning there is constantly rule changes to gymnastics. So actually, if you were to look at my Paris routine now, that would be technically not a great routine because they've just changed the rules in some way, and they're as subtle as like hand positions being different on the pommel horse, and it's all in an effort to just kind of evolve the sport more and more. So this routine that I've got currently written down that I'm going to be working on when I'm back is completely different. There's new skills thrown in there. There's a whole different structure to it. There used to be 10 skills in a routine, and now there's 8 skills in a routine. So what that does is obviously makes a routine shorter, but it challenges people to put more difficulty in the routine because there's less there's less leeway almost. You want to get ahead by adding more difficult skills. Means you're less tired as well, so it might mean that you make your dismount a little bit more difficult at the end of the routine. And those are the kind of rule changes they make in gymnastics all the time, where they're constantly trying to make it more exciting for spectators, but then also make it more challenging for us gymnasts.
How conscious are you when you are on the course? Is it all just muscle memory and just zero brain activity, or is there not?
It is a mix. It is a mix. So I always think it's your preparation should really reflect on your performance. So you wanna get so many numbers done of that routine in training that you can almost just hit the autopilot switch in competition. But the issue with that is things can go wrong in competition as well. Your hand might slip a little bit on the leather. You need to make adjustments here and there. So you need to be conscious enough to make those adjustments, but then also be confident enough with the routine that you can hit the autopilot switch. I had to do, so when I rotate my body around, that's just called a circle on pommel. I had to do like one extra circle on pommel right towards the end of the routine, just before my dismount. And I think it was cool that I was able to do that because it didn't lead to a deduction or anything, but it almost showed to me that I was conscious in that routine. And there's been routines I've done in the past where I've been like, I don't even remember like doing that, like it was all just a blank. And I think those were times I wasn't conscious, but I was glad I almost had to do that extra circle to prove to myself, like, yeah, that was cool that you were so prepared you could do that, but then also you were in the zone, you were actually prepared to fix things if it went wrong. So, but yeah, a little bit of both.
I think that we're 45. I'd like to thank you all for coming, and round of applause for Rhys. And yeah, we'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you very much.
It's not really